Hi everyone, I'm Bonnie Violet, trans femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, digital chaplain.
I'm Pacey, trans masc, non-binary, mental health and recovery advocate.
And welcome to Transjoy Boise, where every story, laugh, and act of joy is a stand for our community.
We upload. Oh wait, damn, I fucked it up this time. We upload.
I wrote it wrong.
You wrote upload.
I did not mean to. We uphold.
All right. You sabotaged me this week.
I did not mean to.
We uphold. All right. Bold voices share real experiences and celebrate trans lives thriving.
Tune in, connect, and spread the joy because trans joy is unstoppable.
I love it.
Oh,
you sabotaged me this week. I'm gonna keep this forever.
I really didn't mean to do that.
No, I love it.
But I'm kind of glad
there was a lot of trans joy in that moment.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. I love the new intro. Yeah.
Yes.
We're really excited to have another guest with us this week, and someone who we both think is just an absolute badass. Mm-hmm. We have Jenna Damron, the LGBTQ organizer at ACLU Idaho. So yeah, you want to just kind of tell us what you're all about?
Yeah. So like Pacey said, I'm an LGBTQ organizer at the ACLU of Idaho. My role really kind of straddles both being in community and doing community organizing work and being in the legislature and fighting specifically anti-LGBTQ bills in our legislature. So we're I think six and a half weeks into our legislature right now, and it's getting pretty dirty.
Yeah. I imagine that you're just really busy all the time.
Yeah. I feel like I've got 2 full-time jobs right now,
mm-hmm.
one working and one taking care of myself so I can keep doing work.
Yeah. Well, and because you're like the LGBTQ, I mean, there's stuff happening in a lot of those different areas. Like if you were just focusing on the T or the Q or the drag, yes. Which is not part of that, like that's enough just on its own. So yeah, how do you manage that?
I think just in general, like the ACLU is actually a really broad organization that works on a lot of different issues. And I'm the person in the organization that gets to be the most narrow in LGBTQ issues. So to your point, it's almost not narrow enough because there's still so much work to be done. But externally, it's like I'm the person that gets to really hone in and focus. And I think that's good because our Republican lawmakers are really honed in and focused right now. And so even just tracking just the LGBTQ bills is almost a full-time job. But as an organization, we're tracking 170 bills right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel lucky that I get to be so narrow and focus on really one set of bills. But it's hard. There's a lot.
Yeah. Well, and we're meeting today to talk about, again, one of those parts. And we wanted to talk a little bit about drag because drag is in the mouths of Republicans again.
Yeah.
And do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think to understand. We really have to kind of go back to 2022. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to give a whole history lesson here today. But there were pride festivals in North Idaho and really across Idaho that were targeted in 2022. If you remember, that is when the Patriot Front showed up to Coeur d'Alene's Pride in the Park event. And
luckily they were like stopped before they got there.
Yes, all of them.
Yeah.
Was stopped there. But the very next day, from the same Pride Festival, this doctored video appeared of a drag performer in North Idaho. Performing at Coeur d'Alene's Pride Festival, the very same festival that just a day before had this awful, hateful, scary, targeted incident. Right. So this doctored video appears on a far-right blogger website, Twitter, and it's showing what they're saying is an indecent exposure of a drag performer, which is hysterical to me, actually, because if you know anything about drag performers and particularly drag queens, which this person was, there is padding and layers. And there's just really no way that anything could potentially accidentally be indecently exposed, right? But this doctored video appeared, And the Idaho Family Policy Center launched a campaign against drag.
Yeah.
And they brought their first drag bill, and that bill in 2023 during the legislative session, and that bill actually named this false accusation of this performer. At this point,
But not as false.
it didn't
Not
name it
yet.
as false. It named it as if it actually happened, even though she had already been cleared by the prosecutors that, they reviewed the footage and there wasn't any indecent exposure.
Mhm.
So
And since she's sued and won, right?
Yeah. So I think that's important context when we're talking about this bill. A drag performer involved in this incident sued the far-right blogger, and that lawsuit was resolved earlier, I think late last year,
Mhm.
to the tune of $1.1 million.
Yes. Mhm.
I remember that happening.
This performer's name is Mona Lisa Millions.
Millions.
And so shout out to
Perfect.
Manifestation.
yes. It's really
We got to change our names.
really quite beautiful. Yeah. So this drag performer won the lawsuit against the original far-right blogger that spread this misinformation, $1.1 million. And now there's an additional lawsuit, which is really interesting because the Idaho Family Policy Center did not take their still, so they had a still of the footage
Mhm.
that was blurred out, and they used it to push this petition to ban drag in Idaho. And so there's a current lawsuit that has yet to be resolved that is this drag performer versus Idaho Family Policy Center,
Right.
which brings us to 2025,
Mhm.
where we have the Idaho Family Policy Center introducing yet another bill that seeks to ban drag in certain situations in public.
Okay.
Yeah. That's where we're at today.
See, that seems terrifying that there can be a doctored image or a doctored video and it can be used as legitimate cause to push legislation. Like that seems illegal and just ridiculous.
When they put so much money behind it too, like the family, is it called the Family
Policy Center?
Policy Center. Yeah.
Idaho Family Policy Center. So I'll tell you, this is great timing because this bill actually got a hearing this morning
Mhm.
in the House State Affairs Committee. And the Idaho Family Policy Center showed up with their petition, which they claim over 7,000 people have signed. It's a stack of papers like this big. They presented that to the lawmakers. This is the petition that they're being sued over currently.
Oh, wow. So they're
The doctored
using that
image.
doctored image. They collected signatures and then they're now using that. Can they do that when they're in court for it? Or,
I think this case,
like it matters.
yeah. The question of like, can they do that in the legislature
Mm.
is like they did. It
Right,
happened
right,
this morning. I think the court battle, specifically the court battle between this individual performer and the Idaho Family Policy Center, we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah.
But there's some pretty good news articles on this that seems to say that, that this performer's lawyers are saying that the evidence and their case is really strong.
Mhm.
That just seems like it's making a total mockery of the court system to have fake evidence.
Yes.
And I know, and this is probably the most frustrating part for me personally, is if it were the other way around, like say there was a Democratic bill, right? Or like case that they were trying to pursue and they had this doctored image, the Republicans would be like, absolutely the fuck not.
Yeah.
No way. Like there's no fucking way.
Yeah.
But now it's just that double standard drives me absolutely up the wall.
And we do see that. We see that in the legislature a few weeks ago on a bill on flags in classrooms. A Republican lawmaker said last year somebody from the LGBTQ community came and said that they were being harassed, and so they needed this flag at their school to have a safe space, which makes sense, right? That's what we all know the pride flag to be a symbol of. She was so mad because she had apparently asked the police officers in that district if that incident actually happened, if that person was actually being harassed, and they said no. So she was so mad that somebody from the queer community was making up harassment. And what we know is that it probably just wasn't dealt with
Or
through formal
reported.
avenues
Yeah.
or reported in the school. But she wanted to make it very known that any objection to this bill because of that reason was unfounded because of some false story that she believed she had gotten a hold of.
Yeah.
And then we have, the double standard, the hypocrisy of this coming up.
And what can folks do to help like combat this?
Yeah. I think when this question comes up, a very natural answer is like reach out to your lawmakers, right? But I want to challenge you to do something a little more impactful, potentially. I want you to have conversations with your friends, your loved ones, your family about drag. And I want you to help the people in your life not buy into the narratives that folks are pushing about drag, about trans people, you know? I think, maybe one of the main problems with the bill that we have in front of us, or in front of the legislature right now, is, and the bill numbers, House Bill 230, is that it lumps in dances and gestures with things like masturbation, intercourse, unclothed genitals. So it says this is what defines sexual conduct. And I'd say it's really like eerily similar to the library censorship bill, where they put in a bunch of stuff that is like, okay, reasonably, children should not be able to access pornography in libraries.
Right.
But then we're lumping in homosexual content as pornographic. We have the same thing here, right?
Because they're redefining. I mean, there's already obscenity laws. You're already not supposed to do that. Like it's already criminal.
Yes.
Like they're just redefining what could be obscene.
They're moving the goalposts, right? To be like, well, this is what qualifies as pornographic, and we've seen that already with them trying to do that with just saying that trans people are inherently pornographic,
right?
So this is just another way to criminalize us,
because they sexualize us.
Exactly.
I mean, I really think it says a lot more about them than it does about us, because most drag artists are not. It's not sexy. I mean, it really isn't. Like, I've been doing drag for 7 or 8 years, and it's not. It is a very like. It's not a sexy thing. I might think I look good, but it's not sexual. And it's just like, it's very like life changing and life affirming and makes me feel good about myself. But it is like the furthest from sex or pornographic, And I think just like any sort of entertainment or performance, that's my experience with drag. There is drag that might be a little bit more, risque, but that's usually like in a bar and it's not in front of children. Just like you don't go, you don't take your 7-year-old to a rated R film at the movie theater, or you don't like give them the YouTube and just say watch whatever you want. Like there's children, that you can set it up for what's appropriate for children, and that's drag artists do the same thing.
Well, and I think to your point, we don't allow people to sue the movie theater if their teenager goes to a rated R movie.
Exactly.
Whether or not the teenager had permission from the parent to go to that movie.
Right.
What's written into this bill is that you would be allowed to sue the performer, the company, the festival, the bar, whatever it is, if a minor went to or experienced a drag show, even a family-friendly drag show.
Right,
and that's where we're seeing this like non-sexual expression of and queer culture being sexualized and being treated way differently than things like movies or ballet or
going to any other concert.
Yes.
I mean, they go to concerts and see Taylor Swift or Miley Cyrus or whoever, and they're sometimes they are wearing bikinis or bodysuits or whatever, and that's just performance. It's part of entertainment. It's not even like they're not sexualizing them, so why are they sexualizing people that are in drag?
Exactly.
When it's the same thing.
A lot of the drag performers, I think that there are some that are really sexualized, but those are at a bar. Those are at a club where you have to be 21 years old to even be in there. Yeah. So it's like that is a moot point because kids aren't allowed in there.
Right.
But then those same performers, when they perform on the main stage at Pride, they change their name. If their name is sexual, they completely tone it down and they make it family friendly. So it's not like there's this super risque, perverse thing fucking going on. And I think a lot of this is coming from misinformation, the things that people read on right-wing blogs, shit like that. Because even on our social media, I see people saying these things about drag or trans people that are just so
out there.
Just ludicrous. But it's like they don't know, and they're not being exposed to the truth. They're being exposed to these conspiracy theories, all this shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, part of me is so mad, just like, well, you guys are ridiculous. You don't understand. But there's another part of me that's like, but you don't know.
They don't even care
You
to
don't
know
know.
though either. Like,
And I think really like people are victims of both that kind of misinformation that you're talking about and disinformation. This bill is presented as something that's going to protect minors, that is going to protect minors from things like masturbation or what else do I have on here? Intercourse, unclothed genitals, you know, things like that. But what is being left out of that conversation is that it's lumping in drag performers that might be wearing a push-up bra or hip padding as to accentuate their secondary sexual characteristics, which is written into the language of the bill as inherently sexual, like indecent.
Oh yeah,
Right.
because it's like the very padding that we're talking
Yeah.
about.
So
that,
on
like,
its face, it's like, yes, we all want to protect children from seeing pornography
Totally, yeah.
or you know, truly sexually explicit things. That's where they get people on board, but they're so
they're
misinformed.
sexualizing things that aren't sexual.
Yes.
And that's like, well, and it's like when you and I first kind of started working together, we did the Drag is Not a Crime fashion show. And that was like an all ages event. And it was almost completely funded by churches, like from around the community. And we had over 300 people show up, which was like, it was awesome. I will tell you, it was the most,
it was
like,
so fun.
it was so wild. And it was almost like a pep rally. Once the fashion show started, it was like, we were doing the announcements. It sounded like we were like in a wrestling like match. And we're like, and in this corner, like it felt that way. Like I was getting to do some of the announcing and it just felt like I had to like scream into the mic so that everyone could hear over the cheers and stuff. And it was all ages. And, you know, I met with the drag artists ahead of time, like, hey, like, what do you care about? Like, make a look. And, you know, it's an all ages thing. So think about what you're going to wear or what you're not going to wear, you know, or how you're going to tell your story in a way that is age appropriate. I mean, those are the things that we do as producers and those are the things that we do as drag artists.
Yeah, I find that especially in having worked with drag performers pretty much my whole time at the ACLU, because I started in 2023, the first drag bill. And so I've been working on this for a few years now. It really, like, especially in the last several years, drag performers are scared here. You know, with what happened with Mona Lisa Millions, they are, like you said, they change their names if it's like maybe could be misconstrued as too sexual.
I've blocked off certain like photos of me.
They changed some of their social medias. Some drag performers say, well, I'm not going to do family friendly shows because I also do more skate drag that is 21 and up. And I don't want that to be weaponized against my community. Like drag performers are already careful. Especially here in Idaho with what has been happening here since 2022. You know?
And how would you or could you talk about the link to trans people? Because I know like a lot of the times to non-queer folk, drag queens are trans people and trans people are drag queens. And I think a lot of this language is about coming for trans people just as much, I wouldn't say more, but just as much coming after trans people it is about drag performers.
Yeah, because it seems like even just wearing clothes that don't match like your assigned sex.
It's your sex at birth.
Yeah, exactly. So it just seems, and that again is one of the things that's kind of like they're sliding in like the very last paragraph. And so, I would love to hear about that.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite testifiers this morning against the bill was a drag performer. I did not catch their name. I wish I could do a shout out, but they got up to testify and they said, what is considered offensive is I am a woman wearing pants. Is that offensive to you? When we're talking about that, like, number one, a lot of these laws are written so vaguely that they do target trans people inadvertently. And so we need to discuss how.
Do you think it's inadvertently?
No. Maybe I misspoke.
No, I mean, maybe it is. I don't know.
I think it's very clear that this specific bill is focused on drag performers and not trans people. And I say that because there's another bill that is focused on indecent exposure that's more promotes criminal liabilities and is really focused on trans people.
Fantastic.
However, I think the nuance that is missing here is two-part. one, we really have to understand that drag is an expression of gender, is an expression of joy.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the things that drag performers do and wear, trans people are also going to utilize to express themselves, to feel gender euphoria, and, you know, to understand themselves.
Yeah. Well, many trans people end up doing drag because that's the only place they can express themselves. I know for me, that was like, drag was the gateway, if you will, into me being able to transition, because I was able to try on these different clothes that I was never allowed to wear, and this expression that just fit me, and I never wanted to get out of it. And it wasn't about a performance. It was just about like, oh, this feels good on my body, and it helps me live in my body better. And so I think, you know, to attack drag is to attract trans people.
Yeah. And I think the other piece of this is lawmakers and Christian nationalist lobbying groups have been working on this for several years. Laws like this are really intended to create a certain type of public discourse and to create a comfort in discriminating against people that don't fit a gender binary. And so while this bill is specific to drag performers, it's going to have implications for trans folks. It's going to have implications for trans entertainers. I think of Boise Pride, one of the headliners last year was a trans woman.
Oh, like Adora Delano?
Yes. And this bill is written in a way that would allow a minor and their family to sue Boise Pride and potentially her herself just for existing on stage as a trans person. And that is scary. That really is scary, because when you're introducing these civil penalties, now you've got organizers who won't even do drag. They won't have drag at Pride because it's too much of a liability for them, because they want to follow the law, because the law is written in a way that doesn't make a whole lot of sense and doesn't provide clear guidelines. So we end up with over.
And it pushes us back into the dark and into the corners and into like the secret hiding places that.
Because all of this is just intended to erase us, you know,
from public
sphere. And like because you know, you've got the websites, you've got all of these things that they're erasing us from, and now it's just, it makes it even easier to discriminate against us when we become even more of this other. It's like we don't have these forums that we have, or these stages that we used to have, and it just is making us even smaller.
Well, and I think one of the things is like, I think that it's scary that these bills are being presented, but I think it's even scarier that they'll probably pass, given the legislature that we have, given the Republican heavy, like that we have, the conservative power, but also, and I like the Democrats who won't even stand up for anything. Like there's so many people that claim to be there to support us, and they're the only ones we have at the table. You know, and they're like, I don't understand why people can't just stand up for us. Because they're already like, if you're a Democrat in that environment, you're already kind of like, they expect that of you. So why not step into that instead of just like, I don't know why they aren't doing it, but it's very frustrating.
I think they're leaving a lot of their constituents behind right now. And I mean, a lot of my work is to try to pull Democrats.
Well, next year we need to have some drag queens and some drag kings and some drag things, and we need more trans people. In legislature.
Absolutely. We need more queer people trying to translate the difference between a drag performer and a trans person to what I would consider a fairly conservative Democrat. It's a hard job.
And so dehumanizing.
We need queer people and trans people in our legislature.
It just seems like everything, so many of these bills that are being introduced, it feels so much just like a foot in the door, like testing. They're just like, okay, well, if we start with this, with being able to, you know, prosecute people or sue people for being on stage, just existing, well, that will make it a lot easier for us to do the same thing for them using a bathroom.
Right.
Like a public bathroom, you know, and I know that there's already stuff for like the government buildings, stuff like that. But I just feel like it's all headed in that direction, because it's, you know, you start small and then you can do whatever you want. And I feel like it's very, even talking now today from where we were speaking at the same space
a week ago,
a month ago, right? It's like, this is fucking unbelievable, the things that we're looking at. And I think things that seemed so far-fetched and we were hoping were so far-fetched a month ago.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, okay, well, this
Coming
is
here
just
and more. And a lot of this is like written out in Project 2025, right?
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Like it's like the playbook is out there,
Yeah.
and we're just not responding well.
He's
to it
doing
for whatever
everything
reason.
that he said he was going to do. In
Yeah.
Project. And I heard that he has already implemented a third of Project 2025 in
Wow.
a month.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, and I know that there's currently, I believe there's 3 bills that kind of impact the drag community that are happening. And you mentioned one.
Mhm.
There are a couple more coming up. And
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about those as well? Or?
Yeah, we can talk about them just a little bit. The other thing, as Pacey just mentioned, we have a bathroom bounty bill in front of us right now.
Yeah.
And I really want to emphasize that all these bills are coming out of the House. The Senate doesn't seem to care about LGBTQ issues negatively or positively. It's not one of their legislative priorities.
Got you.
But there is a handful of legislators that have power in the House that keep pushing this stuff.
Mhm.
And what happens is those bills pass the House and then they get dumped onto the Senate. And there's some sort of obligation from senators to hear
just
them,
support.
to pass them, to support them.
mhm.
And so you're really dumping a lot of bills from one committee or 2 committees onto the Senate. And it's just clear that that's not what their legislative priority is.
Right.
Right. So as Pacey mentioned earlier, we do have a bill right now. It's a bathroom bounty bill. I don't have the bill number on this. So we've seen a couple different iterations of it. I can maybe follow up with y'all about it.
Yeah.
But this bill really would say that in certain public entities, so universities, community colleges, domestic violence shelters, prisons, correctional facilities, if you're in a bathroom and you encounter a person that you believe is trans, you can sue the public entity. So they're not saying you sue the trans person, they're saying you sue the entity. So what happens then is that each of these public entities has to write a policy to reasonably try to keep trans people out of bathrooms.
Right. Yep.
And it's super dangerous. In 2023, we had a bill called SB 1100 that did the same thing in public schools. That had a legal challenge. It's not in effect. It's not enforceable right now because there's an injunction on it and it's still being fought in the court. This bill goes one step further. So in SB 1100, it was required that you or the school designate like a single gender bathroom, like with one stall, to give students,
An option.
if they didn't feel comfortable using the bathroom of their assigned gender at birth, an option where they could safely use the bathroom, right? This bill has no such protections, no such measures. It says that these entities can't create single sex or single occupancy. It's not single sex, it's single occupancy restrooms, but it's not required to.
Yeah.
Great.
So if you're a trans university student or community college,
Well,
how are you supposed to pee?
and if you're in prison,
Yeah, absolutely. And here in Idaho, we a lot of our prisoners who are trans are actually currently held in like the wrong facility.
Yeah.
So if you're trans,
yeah,
woman, you're
you're in a men's
typically
facility
in a
already.
men's
Yeah.
facility. And so that's the other thing, is that this bill doesn't really solve much.
No.
And we have to acknowledge that trans people are at high risk for domestic violence.
Yep.
And they're saying that they're going to be turned away from a trans woman's going to get turned away from a women's domestic violence shelter because she can't sleep there. That's included in this bill language.
That's disgusting.
Super harmful.
Yeah. It's following suit of the first place I heard about that was in Odessa,
Yes.
Texas. And that you're able to sue the person.
For $10,000.
Yeah, the trans person
Oh,
for
wow.
$10,000. And I think that
Part of it is like, how are you going to get, I'm like, how are they going to get $10,000 out of me?
Right. Exactly.
That's one of my
Couldn't
thoughts.
be.
But like,
But I feel like that's where this is headed. And I think that this
Mhm.
bill is them another foot in the door, right? And they're like, okay, these are the institutions in which we can enforce this. And then the next one, it'll be more broad.
Yeah.
And I think that I've been worried about this for so long. Like, how are they going to enforce that?
How are they going to enforce that? Are they going to start checking birth certificates?
Are they going to
at the
make us
door?
wear? I've been worried that they're going to start making us wear something, like, or some sort of identifier. Because how, on like a large scale, how are you going to be able to enforce that?
Well, and
Also, like-
maybe part of it might be that it might be difficult for them to prove that a trans person was.
Yes. So this
They're going to be
goes,
taking photos. They're going to be filming. They're
that
going
makes nobody safer in the
Yeah.
restroom. Nobody's safer in a restroom.
No.
You know?
especially children.
Yeah. And so I think what this bill is really intended to do is like to deputize the common person
Yeah.
to police bathrooms. And when
Mhm.
we're talking about deputizing citizens against other citizens, that is so concerning.
Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah.
God. Yeah.
So
Well, and it's forcing a lot of these like public entities don't have the wherewithal just to pay fines or
Yeah,
pay
yeah.
like to be
Yeah.
sued for all this money. Like
They can't
they're
afford it.
going to have to do something to stop it.
As much as they want to support us.
And
You
that's
know.
what they're going
Like a
for
big
is
person.
they're
Mhm.
going for the money. It's like a money grab in some ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, like they're hitting him where it hurts, right? They're like, you can support as much as you want, but we will bankrupt you.
Yeah.
And bathrooms are already really scary. Like every time I had to switch gyms because I didn't feel safe at my other gym, even though it was way better.
Mhm.
And now when I go to the gym, I work out in a hoodie the whole time, which sucks. It's like super hot. And then when I go into the locker room, like I'll put my hood up and with my headphones and I'll just try and blend in.
Wow.
But it's like, I'm not going to be able to do that for that much longer,
Yeah, yeah.
probably.
Mhm.
And to the point that we were having earlier about drag performers being scared and being extra cautious, I think trans people are living the reality so much
Mhm.
more. Like
Yeah. Mhm.
trans people are not going into bathrooms and being problems because they are terrified
Yeah.
right now. I know,
We
you know,
were terrified before.
yeah, yes, and
Mhm.
especially right now, like
Yeah.
I have had conversations with my trans friends about the way they behave in a bathroom to make it seem like they're supposed to be in there.
Mhm.
And it's a lot of like act natural, or like using the stall, getting in, getting in there,
In and out.
in and out quick,
Mhm.
changing gyms to avoid harassment. All this bill does is make people less safe in a bathroom.
Yeah.
And trans people, yes, absolutely. That is
Yeah.
the focus of this bill. But this bill has effects for cis people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to say in a caucus meeting earlier this week the phrase butch lesbians.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's just like a small piece of joy that I'm carrying
Uh-huh.
with me, I think,
I love
right
that.
now.
Yeah.
But I brought up the point that this bill's going to be
Uh-huh.
weaponized towards men with long hair,
Mhm.
butch lesbians,
Absolutely. Yeah.
people with alopecia,
Well, I mean,
anybody that doesn't fit a gender.
and we live in Idaho. There's a
Mhm.
lot of
There's a lot of butch-looking farm people out here.
Exactly. Like,
yeah, they're totally.
you know what I mean? Like,
Uh-huh.
no, that's just Aunt so and so.
Yeah. That's ants too.
Like,
Yeah.
right? Like,
But
yeah.
like when I want to tell you about this, I told you about this, and I was fucking furious. My partner was at a gym with one of their friends, and they're both AFAB. They were in the women's locker room, and there was a cis man in there with no bottoms on, just hanging out. And I know that the reason he was in there was because he's making some sort of statement
Yeah.
about like, oh, well, if a trans woman can be in there, I can be in there. And I feel like we're going to get, so like,
People
her-
that are pulling stunts.
yeah, like one
And
of
that's disgusting.
It's-
It's predatory.
it's super
Yeah.
predatory.
It's predatory towards the women that are in that bathroom.
Exactly.
And it's especially predatory in the trans community.
Yeah.
Because there is a big difference between a trans woman in a women's bathroom and a predator,
Yeah.
Exactly.
a cis man there
Mhm.
to be predatory.
And he doesn't realize that he is just making the same point that we've been making the whole time. Like cis men are the problem.
Yeah.
Like cis men are the predators in
You
this
are the
situation.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
And
like,
that's
I don't want
already
to think about
illegal.
that.
By the way,
Yeah.
it is illegal
we
to
don't need
go
laws.
into a bathroom
Yeah.
regardless of your gender,
Indecently,
sex,
like he
indecently
wasn't
and
wearing-
harass people in there.
And he wasn't wearing anything on the, he was like fucking Donald Duck, just like a shirt and that's it. And
He's Winnie the Poohing
he
it.
was,
Oh, no.
yeah. And I don't want to think about, because like I get it. I don't want to think about my partner going into a locker room and being, subjected to that. That fucking freaks me out.
Yeah.
But it's like, I feel like there's going to be a lot more of that kind of behavior just because these fucking men are just like, well, I can do it. It's like, you're proving your own point, but you're also putting a lot of people in harm's way because my partner's friend was really upset about it.
And that's meant to stoke the fire against trans
Yeah.
women.
Mm-hmm.
And that's unacceptable to me because I'm sorry, if you're a dude, what the fuck do you care about the women's bathroom?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah, I don't know.
It was just disgusting to me. I was furious about it, but it's like, it's just gonna keep happening, and I feel like it's gonna be happening on a larger scale. And where I'm at now is, we're well beyond the point of like, well, maybe it won't be that bad. So I'm trying to prepare myself for how to interact in situations like that when I find myself, in a situation, not if, but when I do, because at this point, like, I've already been harassed several times in public. So it's kind of like harm reduction at this point, you know, and that's a terrible reality to be faced with, I think.
Yeah.
But we have to. I want my friends to be prepared.
Yeah. Well, and I think to your point, if this bill passes, if it gets signed into state law, you are going to be legally required to use a bathroom where people are going to come into that bathroom and be like, this person doesn't belong here.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's going to be like a false lawsuit because you're just doing what you've been told to do. You're following the law.
Oh, yeah.
And who's paying the legal fees? Who's responsible for resolving that lawsuit? Who's responsible for the legal fees and like the damages,
right?
The emotional damages that you're going to have to go through. Same thing with trans women. Being in a men's restroom makes them extremely unsafe.
Oh God, I don't even want to think about like you having to use. I just need to get a taser.
It's unfortunate, but like I just choose not to go places.
Yeah.
Like I only go where I know I can pee.
And honestly, I think this, like, if you have trans people in your life, and especially if you're not trans, this could be a really good opportunity to say to your trans friends, like, hey, Bonnie Violet, if you're going to the bathroom, I got you. I'm going with you. And if anybody harasses you, I'm saying, like, no, this is my friend. She's a woman.
Yeah.
And we're getting the fuck out of there.
I love that. Yeah. Having like, because that was an issue, 8 years ago when there was that campaign of like, you can pee next to me or whatever. We need a resurgence in that with like, for me, like cis men that are my friends that will be like, hey, I'll go with you. I've got your back. Because there's so much power in that. And I feel like people, in my case, because I can only speak personally, cis men find it so much easier to target me, just me, than if I had other people. Like they feel threatened by other cis men. And I think that it would be really great to have that kind of reinforcement because it feels just scary.
Then you're not alone, you know? And to that point, like, if we get to a point where trans women are really being forced to use the men's restroom, I want our cis men that are allies to go in there with her. Make sure she's safe. Wait outside the stall. You know, make sure nobody fucks with her. I think, and especially our queer community. Needs to come around our trans community like that. If that's the reality we're going to be faced with. Sorry.
No, do not apologize at all. I appreciate you sharing that perspective. And I think like, it's just like, I also like, I don't want to be that girl that's pissing in a stall and has some man standing out there protect. Like, I'm just not going to go. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the thing for me sometimes because and that was one thing that even in my group of friends for a while, it took them a while to realize what it means for me to go out into public and need to use the restroom or not. And like, and it's just like, oh, well, I'll go in with you, or I'll fuck somebody up if they like, I don't want to deal with like, you know, it's like, I don't want to deal with it. Like, I appreciate that you are a badass ally. Yes, you are.
You got my back,
but like,
I'd rather just hold
you. It's like, I don't want to go through that. I don't want to, it's like hard on you mentally, emotionally, you know, spiritually. And so it's just like, oh, it's just, so many layers to it. Cause I think sometimes that's, as an ally too, is just thinking about like picking places and doing things that, you know, cause there are places who have bathrooms that are different, and, you know,
gender neutral bathrooms or single occupancy bathrooms.
Yeah.
If you're inviting your friend out for coffee, take 5 seconds
Yeah.
to think about where you've been before that has those bathrooms, and maybe that's where you want to invite your person.
I often will ask people like, "What's the bathroom situation there?"
Pick up the phone and call. What are bathrooms like?
Yeah. There are some places that have really good like gender neutral bathrooms.
And I'd say that's probably a better form of allyship than like, hey, I got your back if you are going to the bathroom. Like, let me do a little legwork up front to make sure that wherever we're going into is going to
I'm sure there's plenty of trans girls would be like, heck yeah, I'm gonna go piss in there. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like I'm just not there where I'm at in my transition and stuff. But yeah. one of the things I wanted to, because I feel like we're probably getting toward the end of the podcast, I wanted people, how can people learn more about these bills? How can they stay engaged and kind of keep up on things and maybe take some sort of action?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the moment right now has never required us to be more in contact with each other. We really need to be around each other, with each other, in communication with each other, and using our networks to spread information that way.
Yeah.
To back out of that for a second, being in contact with organizations like the ACLU of Idaho, like the Queer Caucus within the Democratic Party, shout out to Nixon Matthews and the entire Queer Caucus and all the work that they're doing. Being in touch with them on social media. ACLU of Idaho has a bill tracker that you can follow. You can get notifications when hearings are scheduled. You can get in touch with me. I have an email list that I'll send out alerts like, hey, this bill has a hearing. Here's what it says, and here's the link to testify if you want to, right? And just also being in contact with your community organizations like Transjoy Boise, like the community center, like your pride organizations.
Can you talk a little bit about this?
Yes. Yeah, we haven't even touched on that at all. So this is an awesome way, I think, that people can get involved with HB 230, which is the drag bill that we were talking about earlier. Again, to like really understand this, we have to go back to 2022. So a drag performer in Eastern Idaho, by the name of Callie G. Badass.
Yeah.
Made these postcards in late 2022 and launched a postcard campaign to support drag in Idaho. So they have this on the front. On the back, they have a return address. You're going to write your message to your lawmaker about why protecting drag is important, why this bill goes too far, why dancing is not sexual, right? And then you're going to put in your lawmaker's name, and you can look up on the Idaho State Legislature who your lawmaker is. And you're gonna put your lawmaker in, you're gonna put a stamp on it, you're gonna put it in the mail. And we have, so these are now being done by North Idaho Pride Alliance, who's worked with Callie G, and has been working for a while to launch a campaign to help protect drag in Idaho. So shout out to NIPA, North Idaho Pride Alliance. You can order these postcards on their website, but you can also get in touch with them, and they have funds to pay for postcard printing and send them to you.
Awesome.
So right now these need to go, if you're sending them, I would say within the next week, they've got to go to your representatives.
Okay.
If you're sending them probably after like Sunday, they got to go to your senators.
Okay.
And they could still go to your senators this week, right? But just, it's going to be moving through the House soon. So at some point it'll get past it to where they don't have anything to do with it anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And we have a bunch of these.
Yes, we do.
So I know that we'll be able to hand out as
at
many
the
as we
support
can
group,
at the support group.
and
Yeah.
the wedding. and
Oh yeah, I'll stop by
everything
some
that's coming up.
cafes that I know. Just like it's just because we need to get those out.
And I have a stack as well, so you can always get in touch with me, especially if you're a drag performer. If you want to talk about this on stage, if you want to have postcards at your event, let me know. We can help you.
Oh, that's
Sounds
a great
good. And we'll
idea,
put
yeah.
all that information in the show notes or the description of the video. And then also for folks who might be coming across this who aren't in Idaho, more than likely, depending on what state you're in, if you're in the United States, you might be going through a similar situation. So I'd encourage you to find out the state of drag in the legislation in your state as well. And you can kind of put your energy there.
That's kind of an interesting part of living in Idaho, I have found, just because we're sort of like a testing state for all of this horrible shit. So I feel like on socials, like I'll talk to people and I'm like, well, it's headed your way too.
Yeah.
Like right now.
Well, Tennessee is a state that also has had to deal with a lot of the anti-drag legislation.
I think there's
Texas,
maybe 4 states
Oklahoma.
that passed. Yeah, you all are hitting it for sure. Anti-drag laws. Don't put me on record on saying this, but I'm pretty sure that every drag ban has been found unconstitutional and has been blocked by a court, even in states like Tennessee and Oklahoma.
Yeah, most of it's
good.
just a waste of time and fear and
a waste of money.
Yeah.
So I think to your point, if you're outside Idaho and you're worried about this stuff potentially coming to your state, connect with your local, your
Mhm.
state ACLU chapter.
Think ahead, start
Yeah.
planning for it.
Exactly. Start planning for it,
Start
because
organizing.
I would say, like, I would bet on, just to be safe, bet on it coming to you. Bet on it going to your area, and be prepared for it. So that way you'll already have things in place on how to fight it properly, and you'll have at least a better chance at maybe fighting it.
Yeah.
You know?
And not just red states. There are Republicans in blue states that introduce this stuff. And the only difference between that and a state like Idaho is that they have strong Dems to oppose it.
Yeah. We don't have
and they
that.
have the numbers to oppose it. But this bill will get brought up even in blue states, and that's a good opportunity to get involved in the fight and
Mhm.
involved in the advocacy around it, even if it's not going to pass, because that's the point of advocacy, is to
Mhm.
try to shut this stuff down,
Yeah, yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Did you have any other message you'd like to give to folks who might come across this video?
Drag is joy, drag is love, drag is human expression, and I have been so lucky to be in the company of drag performers, and to witness people's confidence bloom on stage, and to witness the culture of drag in our queer community. And I think it's something really special. We know that drag's always going to exist. We know that drag performances will still happen.
Yeah.
The law might change how and when they happen, but I
it
believe in
will
the
still
resiliency of
Yeah.
the queer community, and I believe in drag as an avenue for joy.
Yeah.
For that.
Will definitely still happen. And thank you so much for being with us today. And
Yeah, thank you.
thank you for being such a strong advocate and ally
Yeah.
for our communities.
Because
Plural,
you're everywhere. Every time there's something going on,
Mhm.
like, you can count on Jenna being there, like,
Yeah.
fighting, which is so nice right now, because
Yeah.
I feel like so many people are almost, I don't know, it's too much for a lot of people.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's nice to see that representation.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's like I think the work that you're doing is great, but I also think what's even more powerful is how you do the work that you do.
Thank you.
I've never felt more supported by a non-trans person than with you.
Thank you.
That's not a common experience within even
No.
members of our own LGBTQ community. So
Yeah.
I just want to honor that, and I've learned so much from you in being
Likewise.
able to be in. I've just learned so much,
Yeah.
and I really
To
appreciate
be
you.
in relation with each other, right? I've learned so much from the two of you. My confidence in organizing has grown so much just from working with you and being around you.
Yeah.
And I don't always get it right, but
None of us do.
I carry deep in my heart a mantra, and that mantra is, don't fuck with my trans homies. We have to stop
Love
this.
that.
And if I can be an example for how other cisgender folks can be outspoken, for how they can do the work to understand trans people, I would be so lucky, because I'm just lucky to have trans people in my life that have taught me about themselves, and taught me about queer culture. I came out 7 years ago, but I was 26. I had tons to learn in adulthood about queer culture, and it's been drag queens, it's been trans community, it's been butch lesbians who have taught me those things and have brought joy into my life. And I wish that that everybody would take just a little bit of time to try to understand a gender perspective that's different than theirs, because when you understand it, you really can be a powerful ally.
Yeah, that quote, "Don't fuck with my trans
Don't fuck with my trans
homies."
homies.
That's like a protest poster. That's a
Yeah.
T-shirt. That's a sticker. That's a patch.
Yeah.
I carry
love
it so deep
Yeah.
in it. I'm like, literally, sometimes I'm like with my backpack in the state house coming out of a hearing room, just like fucking angry.
Yeah. Oh man, I can't
My
even
trans
imagine.
homies aren't like
Yeah.
marching out of the building. Like,
Yeah,
It's just so nice to have someone who, when we are talking about something, anything, you'll just always say, well, how can we help?
Yeah.
And that's really
Yes.
valuable. Yeah, it helps, and it's so empowering just to, kind of validate what we're trying to do. So
and I mean
means a
it.
lot.
I asked that question because I don't always believe that we'll be able to help, but I value your perspective on how we could help, or how other people could step up and help. So I want to know the true answer to that, because I value it, and I mean it, even if we can't help,
Yeah.
like, what would help in this moment? Okay, well, let's try to figure out a way do that.
Right. Awesome. Well,
Thanks.
yeah, thank you so much. And
Yeah.
thanks everyone who joined us today
Mhm.
or tonight or whenever you're listening or watching us.
Mhm.
And we'll check you out in the next episode.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Bye.
Thank y'all. Oh, such a good conversation.
That was fantastic. I learned so much, and I know everyone, because I know that there's